Listen, you smell something?
Human emotions are materializing in the form of a viscous psychoreactive plasm with explosive supernormal potential.
What a discovery, a psychoreactive substance.
Do you know what this equipment is used for?
Boggle or Super Mario Brothers?
We'll have fun!
Yeah! They're still doing it. Really quite good work there.
My friend, don't be a jerk.
We've got no choice. Call the Ghostbusters.
Super Jackpot!
Welcome to Extraplasm Podcast. It's the only podcast on the internet for which a missed release date or a changing schedule is no longer some sort of error. Instead, these are now loving tributes to Ghostbusters Afterlife and its need to reschedule multiple times in order to meet fan demand and reboot the cinematic industry in the wake of the pandemic. And if you're buying that, then I've got a bridge made of slime tethers to sell you. I'm your host, Jim Maritato, aka Think Maniac on the internet, and despite all attempts from the universe to keep this podcast from happening regularly, I'm back with another fun episode on ghosts and ghostbusting. This week, we're chatting with Matt Sanders of TCU Collectibles, aka the Containment Unit Autograph Collecting Group on Facebook, and Matt joins us for about an hour this week for a bit of a debrief on the summer private signings that he and Tom Henry accomplished back in June, and that I was lucky enough to sit in on. So we are going to chat a bit about the folks who we got to meet from Boss Films, the folks who worked in the Ghost Shop, the folks who worked as, principal performers within Ghostbusters that we had an opportunity to sit down with and chat with as they were accomplishing the sort of private signing work that the folks over at the Containment Unit set up. So this is a bit of a conversation about our past, as we haven't really had a chance to debrief on this since June. And to sort of tell you a bit of the story, but it's also a conversation that's a bit forward-looking because a lot of this back half of the conversation is about this year's forthcoming Spooky Empire convention happening in Florida in just a couple of weeks. And while I usually don't like to come on the show and say, hey, here's what you're going to hear in the back half of the conversation, because I want you to listen to the conversation, I'm going to give you a heads up that there was a change to the guest list for the convention since we actually recorded this interview. And normally you might think, well, did somebody go away and you need to give us a disclaimer? No, actually somebody was added. So as you're going to find out in this conversation, this year's guests for Spooky Empire include people like Ernie Hudson, William Atherton, Billy Bryan, aka Mr. Stay Puft, and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire performers Kevin Mangold, who you should know as Slimer if you listen to this podcast, and Ian White, who played Garaka. And so those have all been published guests that we've known about for about, a few weeks that would be coming out and that you can purchase autographs from and that Matt will be handling alongside his associate Eric. But in the last 24 hours since we recorded, it's also come out that Celeste O'Connor will be appearing at Spooky Empire as well. And I know for many of you who are listening, you need an autograph from Celeste on a Frozen Empire or Afterlife piece because Celeste has not done a lot of convention signing, etc. And has really, I'm pretty sure when the Containment Unit interacted with Celeste in the past, it was to offer up a signed letter, essentially that was thanking people for contributing towards a product, or rather a project they were producing. And so this is a pretty cool opportunity to get an autograph from somebody who you probably don't have in your collection. And I would hate for you to be one of the folks out there who starts the podcast, listens for 30 minutes and comes back a couple days later and then finds out like, oh, I missed the window on this to get the signature I really need for my Afterlife poster or something along those lines. So know this, that the different folks who are going to be signing, I just gave you the list. There is a complete, sort of discussion of this in this week's episode in the conversation, but that Celeste O'Connor piece is going to be missing from that conversation with Matt. So if you're interested in placing an order, I will give you up front the email address to reach out to about pricing for each of the individual signers, etc. The email address is cfivegraaphs@gmail.com. If you try to figure that out and sound it out, it's c5graphs@gmail.com, but the 5 is actually spelled out as FIVE. That is short for Category 5 Autographs. Which is the name under which they are marketing this event. So something to sort of know about before you get into the conversation this week is that if you need that Celeste O'Connor graph, or if you need anybody else's, obviously, you have a short window to act because these are going to be orders that close by October 4th. So again, more info is inside this week's conversation. but I want you to have that heads up so that nobody misses out and then feels bad later or emails me and goes, dude, why didn't you say this up front? I needed to know at the beginning of the podcast and not the end. Okay. So Matt and I will share more info for you on those signings in our conversation this week. But before we can get into that, we need to talk about some Ghostbusters headlines.
Still making headlines all across the country, the Ghostbusters are at it again.
Today, the entire eastern seaboard is alive with talk of incidents of paranormal activity.
On topic today, ghosts and ghost busting.
Extra plasm, read all about it. Ghostbusters headlines coming at you.
To start off our discussion of Ghostbusters headlines this week, I want to turn first to a discussion of licensing that kind of gives us a tip-off about some Ghostbusters media news. As GhostbustersNews.com reported earlier this week, there was an interview with Jamie Stevens, who is the Vice President of Global Consumer Products and Licensing for Sony Pictures Entertainment. And Jamie Stevens was essentially interviewed by License Global, who is a licensing trade publication that essentially gets into an article and that discusses the various licensing strategies that Sony Pictures Entertainment utilizes and the different properties that they have out there for creating licensing programs and merchandising, etc. And throughout this conversation, they point to things like adult IP like Ghostbusters, Cobra Kai, Karate Kid, Twisted Metal, The Last of Us, and The Boys as being really successful franchises and IPs that have allowed for good marketing to happen. The article gets into talking about Wuxley's capsule collection for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire and how that was viewed as a successful strategy by Sony. Although I think some of us who didn't want to spend that much money on a jacket may not have felt that way. I digress. But the more notable thing is the way that Jamie Stevens goes on to talk about the opportunities that they are engaging with relationship to kids programming. And in this interview with License Global, Jamie comments and says, "We offer a vast range of content through our film and TV groups. One of our most exciting ventures is our kids programming, punctuated by the upcoming second season return of the hit preschool series, The Creature Cases, produced by Sony Pictures Television Kids for Netflix, along with season 2 of Goosebumps on Disney Plus and an upcoming Ghostbusters animated series, which is being produced by Sony Pictures Animation for Netflix." So this is kind of important for a second to just think about. Like, I don't think it's that shocking that a cartoon would be something we considered to be kids programming. And I've even said that something like Star Trek Prodigy, which is a show that ended up over on like Nickelodeon, that was a cartoon for kids, also appealed to adults because it incorporated canon characters and what have you from television series that were created for young adults and adults in the 90s. But this is interesting to me that you're listening to somebody whose job it is to figure out licensing deals and merchandising deals, who's already considering the target audience of kids. And that's probably going to drive the kinds of licensing and agreements we see come out of this and the different kinds of merchandise to get created for an animated series. So is this mind-blowing information? Not necessarily, but it does give you an idea that there's somebody out there already, an executive vice president at Sony, before we've ever seen a cell of animation, who's already considering what the animated series will allow for in terms of licensing agreements and merchandising and all those kinds of things. And I mean, I'm not saying we're going to get this necessarily, but like some of the things they're pointing to in this article are the things that, like, you know, they've made little people from Fisher Price of The Boys, right? Or that there are toys that are coming out that follow on the success of the Creature Cases and the Goosebumps line of stories, etc. That at this point Sony owns the rights to for TV purposes. So this is an interesting development in the sense that it's not shocking that an animated series is going to appeal to kids, but this is something that Sony clearly is thinking about as a pretty much a cornerstone of children's programming that they're going to be utilizing for marketing and licensing purposes and building relationships with other companies as they move forward. And to me, like, that is a beneficial thing. It means that they're not thinking about a Ghostbusters project as like a flash in the pan, let's see how it works, as much as they're actually putting some investment into how they can take an animated series and spin it out into a series of lateral products and projects, etc. So we'll still wait to see what that's going to look like, obviously, and we don't know. But it is kind of interesting to think about that the marketing wheels are already spinning before we've even seen a single frame of this cartoon come out to us. So I'm hoping we're going to get to see something soon. I would love to see something by the end of the year that shows us what this is at least going to look like, so we can get some hype about it, because after Halloween and after Horror Nights, I'm not really sure what the official Ghostbusters headline is of the next, episodes that come after it. And speaking of Horror Nights, let's talk about Horror Nights for a few minutes. And the sort of like last few weeks we probably have of Halloween Horror Nights news to talk about. The story that came out a couple days ago with respect to Orlando was that apparently the Slimer performer, who has been inside the house performing inside of a bodysuit with it looks like it's made of rubber and has rubber arms and then green sleeves underneath it, is no longer performing. Instead, the previous role that was played by a live actor of Slimer has been replaced by an animatronic. As Ghostbusters News points out, this is somewhat consistent with the Hollywood house, which does not actually have a performer and instead has several puppets acting as Slimer, which to me makes a lot of sense, given that I think the last week before I had to travel back east, the temperature at Universal Studios during the day was 107. So I don't really think you'd want to be inside the Slimer suit on those nights in particular. So they're essentially moved to a version of the character on a stand that's hidden by trash, etc. And so I don't know if this really affects or changes much about the experience. And I should say this, if you have not yet seen the Horror Nights experiences in Orlando or Hollywood, there are at this point a number of different YouTube videos that you can check out to take a look at this, and even some that will compare and contrast these different Slimers. If you want to see any of that stuff, like for real, head over to Ghostbusters News. Jason has been cataloging these things over the last few weeks while I've been away from the podcast, and he's got videos that he's linked to that are complete house walkthroughs and etc. that you can take a look at and that really get into the nitty gritty of this. As for me, I'm hoping to go to Hollywood Horror Nights just to go to the Ghostbusters house at this point. Like, I don't really have a desire to go stand in a line for many, many hours to go to many, many houses. I admit it. But we'll see if I get there or not. If I don't, one of the nice things that we know is that because so many people have gone at this point, you can actually pretty much watch it and live it and walk through it. You're not going to get jump scared unless somebody in your house leaps out of somewhere and like just shouts at you while you're watching the video. But if you are not able to travel to Orlando or Hollywood and you want to get a sense for what this looks like, there are enough first-person shot videos at this point of this experience that you can get a pretty good grasp of what goes on at each of the houses. And they are a little bit different, so it is kind of cool to take a look at them each. So I won't spoil it. I won't tell you any more than that because I don't want to ruin it for anybody who might be going. Especially shout out to our friend Eric Christensen of the Moogly Fan Club, who I know is going soon as part of an anniversary trip, I believe. So I don't want to ruin that for him. That would be really bad. And he'll throw me out of the Moogly Fan Club and then I won't be allowed to hang out anymore. And that'll be bad. So we're not going to do that. But the other Halloween Horror Nights news I'll tell you is that a whole bunch more of the merchandise that was available in store only is now available online in the Universal Orlando Resort online store, including the really cool hat that I want. I still have not ordered it. I probably should before it's not there anymore. That would be bad. So if you want to pick up any apparel, sweatpants, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, backpacks, all sorts of stuff, jewelry, you can head over to the Universal Orlando website and check this out. The URL is shop.universalorlando.com. And at this point, virtually, it seems like, I don't want to say all of it, but a large percentage of the things that were available in the shop at each of the theme parks is now available online. I'm sure some things that I'm going to be wrong about, and I'm sure that some of you who are way more accessible, or rather have had way better access to a theme park to go check out the various gift shops, will prove me wrong on that. So if I'm misspeaking, forgive me. But there's definitely way more up there now online than there was a couple weeks ago, whether it's hats, decal sheets, t-shirts, sweatshirts, I think headbands, I mean, all kinds of stuff at this point. So go over and take a look at what's available at shop.universalorlando.com if you want to see more of that. Moving out of our discussion of Halloween Horror Nights for a few minutes, we're going to chat about video game news, but we're going to talk a little more about video game industry news for a few moments. As it turns out, on the 17th of September, N-Dreams, the developer of Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord, had announced that they would be laying off up to 17.5% of their employees, which is obviously a pretty significant chunk when you're deciding that almost a fifth of your employees will no longer be working for you. They essentially said, according to Ghostbusters news reports on this, that they were experiencing a challenging VR games market. They were blaming as the cause for the layoffs, and were suggesting that these layoffs would not impact development of current titles. So essentially titles they're currently supporting or they're currently in development were not going to be canceled as a result. That being said, it's worth saying that End Dreams has not really announced any sort of additional content plan for Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord. They had a downloadable content pack that came out for Frozen Empire earlier in the year, but since that came out, there really hasn't been any sort of announcement of more add-ons, etc. So I don't want to say that means like that game is going to be dead, but it seems not particularly great, and it seems somewhat foreboding that about a fifth of the workforce at End Dreams is going to be laid off, and that there's going to be a focus on those things that are, going to be generating the most revenue. And probably that means not generating a lot more content for a game that's already been out and has probably sold the vast majority of, licenses to consumers that it's going to sell. So we will sort of have to wait and see. But I will tell you that if you're into finding out more about the End Dreams game, there's some really great content that's come out as a result of artists who worked on that game via their ArtStation pages over the last couple of weeks. Again, Jason over at Ghostbusters News has cataloged this in 2 articles, one on the 21st and one on the 22nd. The one on the 21st takes a look at the Rise of the Ghost Lords New York City firehouse model, their Garaka model, and essentially the components that were utilized to create their Frozen Empire DLC pack. So it's a really in-depth look at the varied 3D models and what have you. And it's really kind of neat. It's kind of cool stuff. And it makes me wish that I had more of an opportunity to engage this game, because the only time I ever really had a chance to play it was on JD Raymer's headset for a few minutes. And it was before they did any of this stuff that brought in the canon universe into that game and was focused predominantly on the San Francisco characters they had in there. So this is kind of cool. It makes me wish that I had a Meta Quest at this point to go back and try and look at the DLC from Frozen Empire predominantly, because it's really what I would have wanted out of a VR game as opposed to kind of what they put out. And along the same lines, there were originally plans, it seems, to have a version of the original OG Ghostbusters, although stylized in the same sense that the characters are in the rest of the VR game. And so some concept art that would bring back the classic team has been shared as well over on ArtStation pages from the folks who made this, in particular, Jing Liang, whose name I'm probably mispronouncing, and if I am, I'm very sorry, has shared a set of concept art for Ray Stantz, Peter Venkman, Winston Zedmore, and Janine Melnitz, as well as Frozen Empire characters of Lucky, Trevor, Phoebe, Podcast, and Gruberson, all in the same style. So this is kind of neat that like there were all these ideas that could have taken the OG canon Ghostbusters. And this is one of those moments where you want to look at a company and say, hey, I know you're failing right now in some way. You need to lay off like a fifth of your workforce or something. But if you want to figure out how to sell me one of these things, then you need to go get these characters and put them in the game. Like that's how you're actually going to get somebody to, at this point, want to pick this thing up, because you didn't get me to bite on buying a new piece of hardware just so I could play a game that had characters I had no connection to in the Rise of the Ghost Lord San Francisco story. But now you're giving me characters that I would like to play next to in a VR world all of a sudden that existed as concept art. Like this is how you turn the corner on that. Maybe that would be nice. Do I think it'll happen? Not really, but it would be great to see it. I will also just sort of throw in there real quick as a quick sort of stinger as opposed to like a real story. We are have to be getting very close to a DLC happening for Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed pretty soon from IllFonic. There are 2 left that are supposed to happen this year in Q3 and Q4, and we presume that one of them is probably going to be associated around Halloween, given that the last year we got sort of some Halloween stuff. The very first DLC pack that ever came out for Spirits Unleashed happened as a Halloween themed thing. So I'm hopeful that we're going to start to see that maybe in the next week or 2. We'll finally see another DLC pack, and then we'll get to the end of the year and we should see the very last one that we expect to see, at least, for now. We know that game will probably continue to receive some maintenance updates, but that'll probably be the last set of new content we get in the last DLC at the end of the year. So we're getting pretty close to probably the penultimate DLC pack coming out, which is supposed to feature 2 ghosts that are shocking and some haunting that's happening down at the courthouse level. So we'll see what's going to happen with that when it takes place. But keep your eyes and ears open because I'm hopeful we're going to hear more from IllFonic about that soon. Let's talk about some Ghostbusters merch for a few moments. Arguably the biggest news that's not really news is that Hasbro has let out that they expect to reveal some new things at New York Comic Con. That likely means the expression of what the next HasLab is. We're going to finally get some experience to see what that is, and maybe some photos of it, an announcement, and who knows what else. I have sort of heard some suggestions that this will be more than just the HasLab tease, and potentially we'll have some other Ghostbusters themed product that is going to be related to it, but nobody really knows. What we do know is that the hype is building and that they are beginning to sort of tease that there will be an announcement from Hasbro that they will have a significant presentation, that Ghostbusters will be a significant portion of that presentation at New York Comic Con. So I would say that if you are anywhere near New York and you can go to New York Comic Con, you totally should this year. There will be Ghostbusters representation there because of that. I imagine there will be some representation there because of the Mondo releases that are going on. I don't know that you'll necessarily get a cartoon reveal there, but I have a feeling that there's going to be sort of New York Comic Con seems to have become a place where Ghostbusters gets announcements. You know, Ghostbusters doesn't really show up at San Diego Comic Con that much. Sony doesn't have that big of a presence there. But if you think about, Afterlife essentially got screened at New York Comic Con. We then had announcements about Frozen Empire that happened at it. So it's one of those things to consider that New York Comic Con seems to be a place that Ghostbusters has sort of started to consider a bit of announcement home. So I would keep my eyes peeled on it, if not just for the HasLab stuff, because there might be some other things that are waiting in the wings to find out about at NYCC. But a lot of people are beginning to speculate. What is that HasLab? What is it going to be? I've said this already. I'm pretty damn sure the thing is an Ecto-1, and that hopefully it's an Ecto-1 that is correctly in scale with the 1/6 figures that the Plasma series line, represented. And of course, really in line with the Maddie collector figures, because it's really what I want to put them with, but I digress. But I'm hopeful we're going to see this thing, and I really hope it does well when it comes out, because it is kind of my dream piece. I'm collecting way, way less than I used to in terms of action figures and toys, and I'm actually purging some things from my collection at this point because it is don't have the room for all of it. But I'm making room for sure, because I absolutely need the 112 Ecto-1 that I've wanted my whole life. So hopefully that's what we're getting, the HasLab, and we'll find out more at New York Comic Con. And if I find out more before then, obviously we'll let you know. The other big merchandise reveal that's happened since the last episode of Extraplasm is arguably that Puma has revealed their new line of shoes. We knew there was something coming from Puma because there were some teases earlier in the year where folks who were involved in Frozen Empire were wearing different pieces of Puma apparel that were Ghostbusters themed. But we've now got a chance to take a look at what their sneakers are going to look like. And so the 2 sets of sneakers that are available or will be launching on October 1st, one essentially looks like it's Stay Puft themed. The other one looks like it's Slimer themed. So the Stay Puft one, its colorway is white, blue, and red. And the other one that is a Slimer one is green and yellow. These are part of the Suede XL line that Puma has put out in the past, and they're expected to run about $95 per pair. These are really kind of nice, I got to be honest. I like the details on these. Those of you who've listened to the podcast for a while know that I sort of hold a grudge against Reebok for putting out really ugly shoes, and these are not them. These are really nice looking sneakers that you could wear and would not be slimy. They would look kind of like people who knew what they were and had an idea of what Mr. Stay Puft's colorways were would probably identify that you were wearing a Stay Puft themed shoe without you having to lift your foot up. If you did lift your foot up, there would be a picture of Mr. Stay Puft on the soles that would give it away. But this is like one of those shoes that represents the colorways of the thing that you like and has some subtle nods without being totally over the top and in your face, like screaming with Ghostbusters logos all over it. Or in the case of those Reebok shoes, looking like you just walked through an operating theater because of really bad pink slime designs. So these are really cool. I actually really dig these. I don't know that I'm going to grab them simply because I have some serious foot choices to make. That doesn't make sense. Some serious shoe choices to make for my feet that I often have to be pretty judicious in what I put on my feet in order to stand around for a long time and not be in pain. So, and there are some people who I know will buy these and put them inside of an acrylic case and put them on the shelf and they'll look gorgeous. But that being said, these give me some pause to go, wow, I wish I wore more shoes like this, because if I did, I would want these. And along the same lines, another thing that sort of has been announced in the last couple of weeks is that Loungefly has a new line of bags out. There's a new backpack that they have out, as well as a crossbody bag that I have to say is like probably the most interesting Loungefly bag I've ever seen. The backpack is a backpack that has essentially Stay Puft coming off the back of it, and then the Ecto 1 is on the front pocket of it. But the Ecto 1's headlights light up when it gets dark outside, which is like kind of a fun idea that if you're wearing the backpack and you're walking home from somewhere, you are going to be better lit because you have headlights on the back of you. But I will say the crossbody bag that they have put out is one that I find way more interesting because it is in the shape of a ghost trap. The bars on the side of it light up for the same reasons of visibility. And it comes with a coin purse that has ghosts on the outside of it. Like, looks like you've got like a terror dog on one side and you've got the library ghost on the other. And the coin purse fits into a slot in the top of the trap, almost like you can, trap a ghost, trap your money in it, which is kind of awesome. So I find these really cool. I'm not usually a huge fan of Loungefly bags because I don't find context where I need them, but I've been traveling a lot more recently and flying and really looking at, wishing I had a better backpack. And at $80 for the backpack here and $75 for the crossbody bag, these are not really terribly priced. They're pretty cool. The inside designs of them also feature like Ghostbusters logos and the library ghost and a variety of other ghostly patterns and things in it. So if you want to check these out, head over to Ghostbusters News and take a look at what Loungefly has out to offer. These are available for pre-order now, and I believe that they will be shipping to you in October if you are making your order, in the next couple of days. So remember, the Loungefly stuff usually sells out eventually, and then it goes up in price as well. So if you're the kind of person who likes to buy things because you're like, hey, it's a Ghostbusters item, and I don't know if I really want it, but if I don't want it, maybe I'll sell it later. That might work out in your favor. I'm not really sure, but give it a shot. Let's talk about another piece of Ghostbusters merchandise we've talked about a few times before. Halloween Costumes had previously shown off that they were going to have an inflatable Ghostbusters firehouse. And you've heard me and Jason Fitzsimmons joke about the idea that we didn't really know how big it was or what you could put inside of it. We also wondered whether or not you could put the inflatable Ecto 1 inside of it. And as it turns out, you can park that thing here. This thing is massive. It is going to stand at 9 feet tall. And beyond being 9 feet tall, it is 10 feet long and 7.5 feet wide. So this is according to a story that Jason reported on September 17th, that he got details directly from Halloween Costumes, as the product description has not been updated with this information at the time that he wrote it, but it appears it has been updated now. So 9 feet tall, 10 feet long, 7.5 feet wide. You could basically throw a rave in this thing if you really wanted to. Not that I'm advocating that. It probably wouldn't hold up to that at a structural integrity level. But it is available for pre-order now for $349.99. If you ever wanted to have your own inflatable Ghostbusters firehouse, if you have dreams of visiting Hook and Ladder 8, but it's too far to drive, you can do it. You can now get it. The one thing I'm going to suggest to you, though, is that it only comes with 4 ground stakes and 4 tether cords. So my advice, maybe get some sandbags to put underneath those stakes and cords, because 9 feet tall and 10 feet long and Santa Ana winds is a concept that really scares me, because I've said I would love to camp in this thing. But now that I'm thinking about that, I'm like, we're going to need some serious foundation to hold this puppy to the ground if we're going to do this, especially if it gets too windy. But this is an amazing thing. And I have to say, for $350, for a 9 foot tall, 10 foot long, 7.5 foot wide inflatable is pretty bonkers. It's an enormous, gigantic Ghostbusters playhouse that any one of us would have been thrilled to have as kids. And if you have kids, you're now required to buy one. If you can't continue to listen to the podcast if you have kids unless you buy one of these, or you're a bad parent. It's not really true. Don't get offended. Don't write in emails, and please don't unsubscribe. I'm just joking. Okay, let's talk about some fan merchandise for a few minutes, some things that fans make and fan media. One piece of fan merchandise and media I want to tell you about is, of course, that our friends over at Phantasm Toys have 2 awesome new entries into their Crypt Creepers line. One is a new figure entirely that looks like a handheld gaming system that has come to life, complete with possessed cartridge, which is pretty damn amazing. This is a figure that I believe is called the Game Boo. I had an alternate name for it that I was pitching to Tony months ago, but I was rejected. I can't remember what it was now though, so it must not have been that catchy. But it essentially looks like a Game Boy that has become possessed and comes with its own possessed cartridge. These eyes on these glow in the dark, and the cartridge slots in and out of the back of this possessed Game Boy. The figure measures about 3 inches tall, and it comes in reusable clamshell packaging, just like the others in the Crypt Creepers line. So it fits really well alongside things like the old school Kenner line with the miniature ghosts that they came with. And so if you want like more of those that are kind of like continue the sense of like 80s and 90s retro culture, you can get yourself a possessed Game Boy, which is pretty great. And the other figure is almost not really a re-release as much as an upgrade. Many of us out there who are deep fans of the Crypt Creepers line going back to the Tony Taylor Toys days before even Phantasm Toys existed may remember a figure called Ecto Ghouler, who was essentially a possessed box of Ecto Cooler in some senses. This is now a figure that's being re-released, but with an updated sculpt that looks way cooler than the original. The mouth is like all way more animated. And the tongue hangs out of it way more creepily, and it now has a giant googly eye on the top that glows in the dark. So again, this is about 3 inches tall, and the same deal of coming in reusable clamshell packaging. And of course, all the clamshell packaging artwork is designed by Brendan Pearce of Badoochi Studios, who does an amazing job designing these characters. It's so cool to see Phantasm continuing to produce original characters of their own design, and that fit alongside some of the more paranormal toy lines that you may love from, you know, your childhood that they, you know, just kind of go with. So I know that I will definitely want to grab these because they go with the rest of the Crypt Creepers line, which at this point I display very proudly in my collection, but also because it goes right along with my Ghostbusters Firehouse. They're not Ghostbusters toys, but they definitely fit right along with them as cool, inspired little mini ghosts, you know, that are kind of inspired by paranormal stuff. So another piece of fan media and merchandise that you should know about is that artist Nick Ross has issue 6 of Ectosism out. This is the comic book series that he's been putting out that is almost like a sequel that exists after Ghostbusters 2 that has taken some art style and design by incorporating actors who could have potentially been in those roles in the 90s. So it's a really cool story. I've really enjoyed reading this so far. You can check out all of it by looking at all of the issues through Nick's social media. And that's really the easiest way to grab some of these. His Instagram webpage, or rather Instagram profile, is nickross138. So you can go over there and take a look at each of the issues that way. He's essentially taken them and broken them into individual posts, or you can go to the top of his Instagram page and there's a Mediafire link that will take you to the various issues that you can download as PDFs. So these are freely available. They're not officially licensed. They're a story being told by a fan who's got some pretty interesting perspectives and who's essentially, you know, I think written a really interesting story so far that I've really enjoyed. I don't want to spoil it for you because I want you to go check it out. But if you're a fan of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, you really need to be checking out Ectosism, because the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is back in a serious way in Ectosism, and it's really fun. One other thing I want to talk about really quick that you should check out that I just think is really fun and cool this week that came out of the fandom is that there's apparently been a life-size Garaka build that has come out that even Gil Kennan has commented on and complimented, as I've seen in social media. This is pretty crazy. These are those folks over at Die Geisterjäger who have once again just blown me out of the water by creating something that's completely insane. They had a ginormous showcase of stuff that they had out at Comic-Con Freiburg that stretched apparently over across 200 square feet. And they had an enormous Garaka that started out as a series of 3D prints of like the torso, the arms, and the head that essentially they scaled up to about 7 feet tall. So you've got to take a look at this if you haven't seen it already. Go over to Ghostbusters News and look for the September 22nd story called Ghostbusters Fans Build Life-Size Garaka Debut Immersive Training Experience. And that's the second part of the story, is that essentially they created a like reverse projection experience with a ghost trap on the floor where Slimer flies around and you attempt to trap him in an interactive way. And every time I see this stuff, I'm so blown away, because like when you see that they created a proton pack firing exhibit at the licensing expo, it's like, okay, that's cool. Sony had how much money to be able to do that? When you see fans creating this stuff and creating these interactive exhibits that work this way, I'm like, oh my God, this is so crazy. And please release the plans so we can all do it, because like this is intense. And I would love to see like all of the booths at so many different conventions where people have franchises get serious upgrades to be way more interactive, because this is so wild and so cool. The final thing I want to share with you this week that I really want you to go take a look at is something that's kind of fun, and also something for which I'm grateful, which I've been saying I've been trying to practice a little more gratitude about things in the fandom. And this is a goofy thing to be grateful for. But I want you to go take a look over at Ghostbusters News. Go back to September 13th and look for a story that Jason put out. It's called Ghostbusters Frozen Empire Garaka Costume Halloween Countdown. And I want you to watch the YouTube video that's in it, where Jason puts on a Garaka costume from HalloweenCostumes.com. And I'm throwing no shade at this video because it's a great video, and I'm throwing no shade at the costume because it's a great costume. But I found this video to be fantastic and hilarious because of one particular moment, which is where Jason needs to utilize his glasses while wearing the costume and puts the glasses on over Garaka's face, thus demonstrating what it would look like if the guy who can deliver the death chill also was nearsighted and needed some like glasses to see, which is completely ridiculous. So, but this is a really fun video, and I think he had a lot of fun making it, sort of dressing up in a Garaka costume, and talked about it for a few weeks before the costume showed up and being excited about it. So if you haven't seen it already, go take a look at Jason Fitzsimmons. And I am very grateful for the amount of humor that he puts into our fandom, because the fun things that Jason's willing to do on camera, not only show us about cool products that are out there, but they also put a smile on a lot of people's faces, and I'm really grateful for it. So, okay, so that about wraps up our Ghostbusters headlines for this week. We'll go now to my conversation with Matt Sanders as we dig into the past of their Ghostbusters Across California signing tour, and also the future of their Spooky Empire opportunities that are happening in Florida in a couple weeks. Joining me on Extraplasm Podcast, returning back to the podcast for the first time in many months, and really the first time I've seen his face since, somewhere around June, Matt Sanders of TCU Collectibles, aka the Containment Unit Autograph Collecting Group on Facebook, is coming back to Extraplasm to chat with us. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Jim. I'm doing good, man. It's great to reconnect and to see your face, like you said, for the first time since the summer. So, a lot's happened, personally, professionally, hobby-wise. And so I'm glad to settle down and catch up with you a little bit.
I think if you use that word too uncarefully, that hobbly word you're coming up with, that Hobby Lobby might sue us. They might decide that we are just infringing on them. They're like, that's our word. We're going to make it now like a marketable word. It's like Hospitaliano for Olive Garden, but it's for hobby companies. I like this.
That's hardcore, man.
I was thinking the last time I saw you, I think we were actually in a pool. I think that was the last place that we were together, was in a pool somewhere at a Ramada Inn.
Because, we're ballers and we stay at the top resorts.
Yes. Yeah, no, the Ramada Inn in what was that? Burbank near the airport Ramada. Yeah. If you want to know where the high rolling people of TCU Collectibles stay when they're in the Los Angeles area, the Ramada Inn near the airport.
I actually really loved the spot. It was a great location. I didn't have to fly in or out of LAX, and I felt central to a lot of great things. So I would do it again.
Hey, I am a big fan of that Ramada Inn, especially because the amount of time that we spent there was with some pretty legendary people that we're going to talk about in this podcast. Because if you had ever said to me hey, you're going to meet a whole bunch of Boss Films legends And then I said, where? And you were like, the Ramada Inn. I'm like, really? That seems like a really offbeat place to meet those people, but it is what happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, the last time we saw each other was during your Busters Across California tour to Electric Boogaloo. It was never actually called that, but I just said it was. And you were out here in LA hanging out and getting a lot done. You definitely covered a lot of bases while you were here. You had an amazing opportunity to see Stuart Ziff and to shoot some recorded stuff with him that I think we can talk about, that JD Raymer, friend of the podcast, helped to produce. You were out here also seeing William Atherton. You saw Hank Mayo. You saw... I'm like losing track. Who else did you see? You tell me, because I'm now losing track of who else we saw.
Yeah, so you've got all those. And then spent time with our friend Mark Brian Wilson, Slimer from Frozen Empire, Kevin Mangold. Then we had the Signing Palooza, which was Eric Fiedler, Craig Caton, Teresa Burkett, Linda Frobos, and it was just wild. It was wild. It was one of those, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe that all these people are in the same room together, and that we get to hear them talk shop and share stories. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and that was the night after we also saw Steve Johnson at a bar.
Oh, how can we forget that? I mean, you talk about a Steve Johnson experience, man. We got it.
It was amazing. Like, I want to talk to you about some of this because, like, I mean, we could do like a 3-hour podcast that was just the blow by blow of like everything that you and Tom and, you know, and I and JD like got to experience during that period where you were gracious enough to be like, hey, come be a fly on the wall and hang out and check out what's going on. And my mind was totally blown, you know, but like, I still have these moments like flashing back where I'm like, I can't believe I actually stood there as I watched Steve Johnson write like full blown letters across people's photos.
Yeah.
Where he just was like signing and just decided, I'm going to sign a lot on these. I'm going to write like whole books of information to people.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild. He wrote one to Aryan. He wrote one for Mark Brian Wilson. He wrote one on random other customers' items. It was crazy. What's like just mind blowing to me is that we had intentions of doing this a lot sooner. So you and I really have not spoken about these interactions or these stories. And gosh, now I hope that we don't forget the details of these things because it feels like forever ago. It feels like a whole different world. But man, what a great time. And I'm glad that you were able to be there and kind of witness the madness and the chaos of it all and get to meet a lot of these people for yourself.
But like, I have to say that it didn't ever feel chaotic. Like the most chaotic parts were the driving in traffic to get from one location to another.
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of wild. Like, there was to like let people like know, like to be a fly on the wall. One of your signings is like, you know, we won't disclose the location of where you met him, but like William Atherton came and met you at a coffee shop. Right. And like you met him and you had all of the stuff he was going to sign, like laid out, just like commandeered a bunch of tables at this coffee shop, laid out all the pieces one at a time that he was going to sign. He was there and it was just like an assembly line of stuff like being handed to him. And I was standing there like as a fly on the wall, just like not sure what to do. And I didn't want to be in his way. So I was just like, I'll just stand over here. And all of a sudden he was like, and who are you? And I was like, oh, hi. And I was like, I'm Jim. And he's like, great. And I was like, I don't want to interrupt you while you were signing. And he was like, no, it's fine. And it was just this like very fluid, low key, like thing where all this stuff got processed in the span of like, I don't know, 40 minutes, like all these things. He just bang, 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 bang. And everything was so well set up that like you had everything marked out. This is exactly where you're signing, like little post-it notes of like whether or not there's a character name, etc. That none of it felt stressful. Like, it's the least stressful batch of autographs I've ever seen signed anywhere.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. It went smooth, but here the other fun part of that signing in particular was a poster that we were waiting on that was literally delivered via Uber last minute, right before William is getting ready to leave, and it flies in right on time, and we were able to add that to that piece, and then we literally had to roll it up, get it back in its tube, and drop it off at UPS so it could make its way to the Paul Rudd signing. So some of the logistics were wild, but
I forgot about that. And that was very stressful for you. And we were coming from like the Sony lot tour, right? Like we had done the Sony lot tour in the morning and like left from there and gone over to do this signing with William Atherton. And when we were leaving there, I remember that Tom was like, how are we going to get this poster? And like the point being though, that aside from that one random X factor, the actual like way that you got the signing done with him was like so pleasant, so low key that it was just like, he was more than happy to do it. And afterwards was like, hey, and just kind of chatted with us for a little while. And then I think he disappeared to go have a sandwich. Just like 3 doors down away from us. And it was like he basically came by to get a sandwich from this place and he had the opportunity to sign some autographs while he was here. So why not? Like, absolutely. It was very cool, you know? And then that was like, what, a couple hours later from us meeting him, it was like, that's when Hank Mayo showed up and we were sitting there then doing the same thing with Hank. And I like want to get Hank to come on the podcast because I know that you've had lots of opportunities to talk to him, but like, Hank is a fountain of stories. Like, oh yeah, he's so nice. He's so kind, and and it's funny because he'll bring up stories that you wouldn't even imagine. But the guy has worked on so many films and franchises that we all love. He's worked with so many icons in the industry that he's got so many just great stories about all of it. And then the thing for me that was amazing was we had that opportunity for people to buy art from Hank. And so for us to go through the pieces, see them for the first time in person and him talk about the pieces and how he used paint pens to create the bubble effect for the terror tub and all this other stuff. Like, again, it was one of those pinch myself type moments. I can't believe that I'm looking at original hand-drawn art from Ghostbusters 2 with Hank Mayo and getting the live commentary while this is going on. Yeah, no, I wish that like we could have in so many ways filmed that and then been able to take that into like the containment unit group as like the video. It's like, here's all these pieces and why everyone needs to buy one of these because they're freaking amazing. Because having like his like sort of going through and talking about what inspired him in each of the pieces he was looking at and like how he did them was so cool. And that came out of like essentially like you all creating a deal. Like he'll make some sketches. Like, and I don't think anybody ever imagined that he was going to put the level of detail and love like into what were expected to be some hand-drawn sketches and instead became like these really amazing pieces of like extended concept art from the Ghostbusters 2 universe, you know, that it just like, if I could have bought them all, I would have. They were so cool. Like, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad. I'm happy to have a piece. I'm happy to have given the opportunity for people in the group to own a piece. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see an opportunity like that to come up maybe one more time. Just putting that out there into the universe. Stay tuned. We'll see. No timeline. I know Hank is currently busy on another project, but we'll see. We've talked about what round 2 could look like. That would be amazing. I will say that it's Hank's fault that I recently watched Ghostbusters 2 with my parents. I was home visiting them. Strangely enough, when I was visiting them in June, the original movie was on AMC. This time around in September, Ghostbusters 2 was on AMC, so we decided to watch it. It is entirely Hank's fault that I sat there and gave my parents a brand new commentary track for that movie. Like, and a lot of it about Vigo and nudity and soap. And if you don't know that story, don't you cover that on an episode of your podcast?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we talked about it in the commentary that we did with you on New Year's.
I think so. I think we may have talked about it there too.
Yeah. Where's the soap?
But Hank's telling of that story is very good. It's fantastic. I hope that like you get to do more with him because he was really great. And then it was later on that evening that you all took off to go see Stuart Ziff. And I believe that you had like a meal at his house. And you borrowed my microphones and recorded things with him. And I felt like, I don't know if I told you this, but I met him recently at the prop store auction. And he was there because the Slimer prop was there. And he also had some of his Terror Dog toes in the auction and what have you. And when I introduced myself to him, I said, "Hi, I was actually with the guys who came to your house with the stuff with Tom and Matt, but I left them." And he was like, "Oh, it was the stupidest way to ever introduce yourself to somebody ever was, hi, I know the guys who came to your house, but I had left them right before they came to your house. And I have no idea why I felt the need to tell him this. I could have just been like, I host Extraplasm podcast, but I needed to make sure that he knew that
7 degrees
I was there in spirit."
from Stuart Ziff.
Yeah. It's like, I didn't come to your house and eat lasagna.
Yeah, no, that was, for those who don't know, Stuart Ziff he's a visual effects legend, worked on Star Wars, all the original films, and so much more. And he ran the Ghost Shop. So he oversaw every creature, so many of the visual effects, and he has never done a private signing before. And we had the opportunity to do his first one. And the other part of our visit there was he's got a ton of stories to tell and some great photos to share. And so we were able to have him tell these stories and share these photos. And fortunately for us, our buddy JD is a gifted editor and content creator and was there to capture and put it together. So make sure you look for it on YouTube. It's all over Facebook and the different Ghostbusters pages. But it was a great conversation.
Yeah, I believe it's on JD's YouTube channel, right? I think it's on JD Raymer is just like what it is called. So yeah, he has to get like some really cool ghost themed thing now, right? Like that's part of the rules is once you start creating content that's Ghostbusters themed and you do interviews, you have to come up with something else. So he has to be like JDGB or so. I don't know. I'm not going to come up with what it is. It's his job. JD, if you're listening, get savvy. I don't know. Start marketing yourself under a Ghostbusters banner. That's what everybody's supposed to do. That's part of the rules. It's not really. Do whatever you want. So you all had an amazing time at Stuart Ziff's, and everybody really should go check out that video because what JD shot was amazing. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, like my microphones were used in the process. So I get to be like 7 degrees of separation from something cool that I didn't do. I'm kidding. But like, I think it's an amazing interview and it's really cool. Like, cause it's just like sort of, you are all sitting around and he is like pulling down pieces of things from around his house and essentially just talking to you about them.
The body sculpt from the Dream Ghost and just random things like that that he's just got laying around the house, which he did say, which is fun fact. He's got the backside of the library ghost that they created, the mold they used so they could float her. And he used it as a salad bowl for some parties after filming. He would serve food out of this fiberglass molding of Kim Heron. So just, you know, fun story for you guys for when you do your commentary on Ghostbusters 1 for your parents next time. Now you have some more.
Oh my God, that's great. Yes, that's awesome. That's great. Between that and being able to talk about Steve's purple Slimer that he wore as a Halloween costume, which is another thing that gets revealed from your trip is we found out that we saw the photos of that. We'll talk about that. But yeah, I mean, it's so amazing, the random stuff that he just has around, like it's just in the house, you know. It's just kind of bizarre to think about the fact that like some of the pieces that we think of as so important and legendary to the creation of a film we care about are garage fodder for people who just like, I didn't get rid of it. I used it for some weird project later on, but okay. So that's pretty cool. You also got to see Kevin Mangold, as you said, which was that your first time meeting Kevin?
It was. I know he did an appearance in LA with you guys, but he hadn't really started. He did a couple conventions, but and him and I interacted a lot on social media, but that was the first time I was able to meet him in person. And he is as great in person as you would think he is based off his social.
Yeah, he's a super nice dude, right? Like he's also definitely right now, as we talk about him, he is listening. That is the thing to always know about Kevin is whenever we talk about him on the podcast, he's listening and he's running. And he's running right now as we talk about him. And then later on, he'll probably send me a DM that's like, that weird thing happened again where you were talking about me while I was listening and I was running. So keep on running. We believe in you, Kevin. Go fast.
Run, Kevin, run.
But no, Kevin Mangold is great. He's such a cool person, such a nice human being, and I've been really blessed to like really get to know him a little bit and to hang out with him a few times. And I was really excited that you all got to do a signing opportunity with him, because when he first sort of like did the signing at the comic book shop we did where he was a few months ago, it was sort of like before he started signing, and I was like, you need to talk to Matt and Tom. Like you totally should talk to them, because they are the dudes to get in touch with if you want to get some private signings established and sort of connect with fans in the community. Like that's a really good avenue to hit up. So I was so stoked that you got to do it together. And he, like, again, like you said, he's such a nice person. It's just totally into what's going on with Ghostbusters, and is like kind of fallen into how much, we all love this. He's really kind of fallen into it as well. And he also collects Slimer merch, which I think is so adorable.
He does. And he wasn't a collector prior to this.
No. So it's like, he's like really kind of fallen into the fandom in a really awesome and deep way. I think is really fun.
So the fun story with that one was it happened in a pizza restaurant, like a pizza shop. So we did a signing with Slimer, who famously has now eaten pizza in a film at a pizza place. Here's just a story about how great Kevin is. One of the servers or one of the kitchen workers found out who we were meeting and what was going on. And then he came out, and Kevin was so excited to meet him. Kevin ran to his car. He grabbed a mini poster from Frozen Empire, signed it for him, gave it to him as a gift, took a picture with him. He just loved interacting with this fan. And he's that way with all fans. And so Kevin is absolutely amazing. I'm excited to see him again here soon. I know we'll talk about that in just a little bit, but he is just one of the sweetest guys I've been able to meet.
I 100% agree with you. And it's been sort of really wonderful to watch him sort of make those connections with fans and really be into it. He came out and supported a fundraiser for an organization that helps women with breast cancer that was going on at a bar in LA. And he hung out the whole night, and we were kind of joking because he was like, I haven't been in a bar since I was 21. Like, he's not really a person who goes out and drinks, but he was totally stoked to come out and hang out in a bar with a bunch of people and help generate revenue and funds for a really important cause under the banner of Ghostbusters, and I gotta say, it's really great that he got tapped to sort of join our weird paranormal family, if you will, of fandom. It's really great. And then of course, like the other person who you got to meet that day after him, who's been doing some really cool stuff, kind of like revitalized and connecting with the fandom, is Billy Bryan, who's been having like that Patreon project he's got going on. It's really cool, right?
Yeah, how to build Stay Puft. And the cool thing that's now both true for both of them is Kevin and Billy are both now in the Star Wars world. And so they get to share that unique piece as well. Billy Bryan, if you guys don't know, he is just uber creative. And so he is an artist, like not just his sculpting and the fabricating he does, but he's a painter, musician. He's creative in so many ways. And so there's so many different outlets that you'll see Billy participate in to get his art and his craft out there. And he's such a, I don't know, he's a fun guy. He is a fun guy who loves and is so proud of his work in Ghostbusters, and so happy to sign for fans. And so again, starting to get back onto the con circuit. And so hopefully you'll be able to meet him at a convention near you. And if you have the chance, you need to. It's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, he's great. I've met him a few times, and he's always really super nice and super gracious. And I really love the fact too that he's sort of multi-generational in terms of Ghostbusters. Right. Like there's some folks who like worked on the first movies, and then they, for 40 years later, they don't work on Ghostbusters anymore. But somehow, Billy Bryan is there involved in some of the prop work for Frozen Empire. And it's his prototype of a trash bag that, becomes, they ended up replacing it with a CGI one, but they're sitting there going, how do we bring a trash bag to life as a ghost? And they're turning to the guy who, was Mr. Stay Puft and also like designed Mr. Stay Puft and figured out how to make all that work. So it's really cool that he's still like very much not just, a legacy performer or a legacy creator, but somebody who's still involved with the franchise in meaningful ways. And if you haven't seen his Stay Puft Patreon thing where you can essentially like learn how to build Stay Puft from Billy Bryan. You got to check that out. It's really cool. I am currently and have not subscribed to it, and I should, because I think the reason I haven't is I'm convinced that if I do, I'll end up building a Stay Puft, and I don't have the time for that right now. I'll stop halfway through, and well, what do you do with a halfway through Stay Puft? Like, that's not like if I get like halfway
Can't even
through
make
it,
s'mores out of that.
No,
serves no purpose.
That's not even. No, instead you have to figure out somebody to take it from you. So, but when I have more time, when I have more space, I really know I'm like, yes, there's going to be a video tutorial on how to do this. I gotta figure it out. It's pretty cool. So then the big thing of the night was we all got together. I rejoined you, and we got to meet Steve Johnson, which I believe you all have met Steve before. I had not met Steve before, but I'm pretty sure that you have, right?
Yep. Yeah. And, it's like we indicated earlier, Steve, it's not just meeting, it's an experience. And Steve is just beats to his own drum, to the sound of his own drum. And we had such a great time. We laughed a lot. Tom worked overtime during that signing to try to get him to sign things as requested, because Steve, as much as he could, wanted to take artistic freedoms and liberties with signing everyone's items, to the point where sometimes he was signing his name and switching the pen color for every single letter in his name, because he just wanted to keep it wild and different and shake it up. And so I think that's probably the hardest that we had to work. Mainly Tom. So shout out to Tom Henry for all his work and trying to wrangle and corral Steve Johnson. But it was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that you were able to see that too, because I know you did your interview with Steve, and that is an experience as well. But to meet Steve in person, he's so charismatic and charming, and just a great guy.
I think that if I had not had the chance to meet Steve prior to doing that interview with him, that interview would have been very different, right? That I sort of had a warm up to Steve, and we got to meet each other and be in the same space and kind of have a bit of like fun together in a wild and sort of a bit of creative way. And then when he came on the podcast, it was sort of a continuation of an informal conversation that I really appreciated, and was sort of, I said to Tom, like in the lead up to that conversation, that I was very intimidated to be talking with Steve on the podcast, because I know that he is a force of nature, and I wasn't sure, like what will that conversation be like? And I think if I hadn't warmed up with him first and had the chance to meet him and sort of go, okay, this is a dude who's just a lot of fun. Like I probably would have been far more nervous and intimidated about how that conversation was going to go. And yeah, I mean, you're right. I remember him standing there, like literally flipping pens and just like swapping out from you had like the fold out of all the markers and all the colors. And he was like a kid with a box of 64 Crayolas. And he was just like, what can I sign and how can I do it differently on each one? And it was a lot of fun to watch him have a lot of fun himself. It was like very like creatively indulgent, but also expressive. And I hope that everyone who got one of those pieces was 100% satisfied and happy about having like a really cool and unique Steve Johnson signature. Like not just like, signed these at a con, like, in a line, like, but he actually spent the time to do something fun and goofy with each of the things that he interacted with, Yeah,
this is one of those things where I think a lot of collectors will get mad that things were not signed exactly as requested. And, but the thing you miss is their personality. Like you're saying, you got a piece of Steve and who he is in those pieces. So one of mine, he signed with a word that I can't even show my kids because it's Steve blank Johnson, his Twitter handle or X handle. But that's Steve. And, so I'll always kind of cherish that and laugh about that when I see it.
Yeah, I think that's the coolest part about, like, I have to say, I think that's the coolest part about like in-person autographs or the private signing that goes in this way, where like you can commission something and it gets done in a relaxed way where the signer gets to have some fun with what they're doing, is that like you get something that is different. right? And you get something that is personal and that is expressive. And I loved that about like watching Steve have so much fun where like, yeah, on a couple pieces, he was like, this is an 8x10. And he was like, I'm writing an open letter on this. And you're like, what? Like, and he just did, you know, and if you got that piece, it's a really cool thing to be like, I have this sort of open letter experience from Steve Johnson that nobody else has. Like, it's just, and a story, you know, a story that goes with it that I thought was really, really cool. And that was just a lot of fun. And that place was pretty cool. That bar we went to was. Yeah,
probably the best meal I had that week.
So the next day was like the big day that you called Signing Palooza, where we all met up, where all the contestants stay for Wheel of Fortune, the Ramada near the airport, which I never thought that I was going to have a mind blowing experience at the Ramada near the airport in Burbank, but I absolutely and totally did, because you had this conference room that you like basically reserved in order to do this signing. And I showed up to this conference room and there were like complete legends of Boss Films, right? Like just sitting right in front of me. And like, here's like all these people who've worked on all these things. I've tried to explain since, like I've said to my mom, like who I met, and I try to tell her, and I'm like, I just look at her and I go, Mom, the Raptors from Jurassic Park. Okay.
Yeah. You see that one when his eye is looking through the window of the door. That's Craig. That's Craig.
Right. I was like, that's Craig Caton. That's like, and so I've had this, like, I met the Raptors, like at least one of them. And my favorite thing about Craig showing up was that when he came in, he was wearing like an Alan Grant style hat and some denim jeans. And I was like, he's straight up. He's from Jurassic Park, I swear. But
yeah,
it was. What was each of their relationships with Ghostbusters? Remind me real quick, because it's Linda Frobos sculpted Stay Puft's head, right?
Yes, and Terror Dog, and she worked on a little bit of the Subway Ghost, or she tried to, and so she was just kind of all around. She is a master sculptor, worked on so many things, and she had her photo albums of so many of the other things that she worked on that we were all able to go through and all that too. Craig Caton worked on Slimer, so he helped that, and Puppeteer part of that. And then I think him and Eric Fiedler both worked on the Subway Ghost. And Eric also worked on Stay Puft. And then Teresa Burkett worked on, she worked on a little bit of everything as well. So I think she was Terror Dog, Slimer, as well. And there's a chance that I got one of those wrong or I'm missing something because I don't have a list in front of my face. And now it has been, again, a lifetime since that. But yeah, I mean, they touched so many of the different ghosts and worked together, jumped off and on projects.
And then Mark was there.
And yeah, Mark Brian Wilson's there. And, you know, Mark has just become a great friend to us and to the containment unit over the years. And he's great because he worked with all of these people and knows them all well. And so he's able to help them feel comfortable and just get them talking. And he'll start asking them questions and sharing memories. And then everyone's opening up. And it was, I don't know, it was a dream. It really was. It was so great.
That was the craziest thing, was like watching all of them like come into the room and then suddenly just all of a sudden like this energy shift happened where it was like they had all traveled back to the 1980s. Like they were all just in like as if they'd been working in the same space and having the same conversations for all of this time, even though they hadn't seen each other in years. It was like many of them. It was really kind of bizarre that it was just like one of them would start to tell a story and then somebody would piggyback on that. And it was like listening as a fly on the wall to all of these just like behind the scenes tales of working in the ghost shop and working for Boss Films during that era that was amazing to experience. And JD and I had like hilariously, we had positioned mics all over the room. We got like no usable audio from it because it was just a bunch of area mics like stuck behind a clock and all these different things. We were like, what can we try and grab from this that would be usable? And in the end, like most of it wasn't production usable. We're able to like get all these stories that, you know, even today, I'm like, if I have a chance to interview these people, I know where I want to go, like what questions I want to ask them, what stories exist out there to dig into that we otherwise wouldn't know about. But it was just so wild to experience that. And the other thing that was crazy was that as they're sitting there, they're passing around like all of these projects, right? And it's like wild because it's like we're watching projects that you've been working on for people come to completion, like in front of us, one after another, where it's like, these are pieces that you and Tom have been carrying around and taking to different people for years to get all of these different folks signed on them who were all people who worked in the ghost shop and etc. And it's like, these pieces are being passed around the table in a circle and they're each adding their own piece to it. It's like, that one's done. And it's like now a pristine work that's finished. And so it was like, on the one hand, it was amazing to like hear all these stories and to interact with them and to ask questions and find out so much more about like what went on as they were making this film. But on the other hand, it was like so cool to watch all these like sort of nostalgic pieces like wrap up. And they were impressed by the stuff they were signing. Like they thought it was so cool. Like the stuff that they were looking at, they were like, that's so wild, you know?
Yeah, it was bananas. And that one was chaos. I think, in my head, I'm a very A, B, C, D kind of person. We'll go to B once we finish A, then we'll go to C, and we'll just kind of go down the line. And so in my head, I thought, okay, we'll work with each signer kind of individually. And then it just kind of became, I'm taking Slimer to Craig, having Craig sign it. Then I'm bringing it to Teresa at the same time that Tom is taking Stay Puft things to Linda. And then he's swinging it over to Eric, and we're passing things back and forth. Yeah. And the Boss Films project's going everywhere. And so, it was wild. And, you know, a couple things got missed in the hurricane of the signing, but they're getting taken care of. But anyway, it was chaos. But it was so fun. And it was one of those that, I was on a fanboy high for so long after that.
Oh, me too. I mean, and the crazy part is like, as you're talking about passing around the stuff they're signing, they were pulling out stuff from their bags to be like, hey, I brought this, right? To like show people. And like Linda Frobos pulls out this photo album, right? Of just like all of these photos that they took during the production, like just stuff that they took in the ghost shop, like a party they went to, etc. And it wasn't until recently that when Steve Johnson was on the show, he talked about how he had taken a purple molding or a purple casting of the Slimer mold and he wore it underneath a whole bunch of other stuff as a Halloween costume to a party. And it was like a few weeks ago that like you, me, and JD realized that those photos are in Linda's photo album. Like that we went back and looked at the photos we took of her photo albums and went, oh my God, they're in there. And I sent them to Steve. And he like flipped out. He was like, oh my God, that's it. Like, that's totally what I was wearing for the party. And he hadn't seen it obviously in years, you know? So it was just so strange that like out came all of these pieces of nostalgia that they've been sitting on for 40 years and have had no real reason to really share with anybody. And it all came out at the airport Ramada in Burbank.
Yeah. I mean, think about just how cool, like if there's a Halloween party you're going to go to, a costume party you're going to go to, imagine how crazy it would be to be at one with people who work in Hollywood and work on all these costumes and makeup and artists and all this stuff. Like that would be the party to go to.
Yeah,
and
totally.
We're looking at pictures.
And it was a photo album of that.
Yeah.
It was just the wildest stuff, you know? And I don't know. It was so cool to meet all those people and to like sort of have this opportunity to connect these larger than life characters, you know, that sort of exist in my brain from the time I'm 4 to these people who were just cool, creative, you know, souls who just were all in this room together, who really had a lot of appreciation and a lot of friendship for each other. There was like everybody there seemed so excited to be back in the same room with each other and to sort of reminisce. And it was really lovely. It was just a really like such a very, I don't know how to put the words to it, but it was just a really amazing and wonderful experience to even just to have been there and to watch them all get to experience that together, like, hey, we all know each other. And this is like what we did 40 years ago. And for some of us, it's like what basically kickstarted our careers or made our careers take off or, was a really important thing that opened doors on other projects we did. And that was some of the other stuff that came out of that was like, they started talking about other projects they worked on, like other things that Boss Films did, So yeah, I wish I could have like sat down with each of those people for like 3 hours and just been like, tell me more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think the trip you had out here was pretty damn amazing. And I was so excited and grateful to be part of it. And so thank you again for letting me tag along. Out of everything you experienced while you're here on that trip, what do you think your favorite part of it was?
Man, so this was, I would say from a hobby standpoint, like you said, finishing up some of those projects, getting those taken. For me, adding Kevin Mangold to, I have a Firehouse project print that I've been adding a ton of people to. So I was excited to add him to that. I think the other thing was I was there with my 16-year-old son, or my son who was just about to turn 16 at the time. And we hiked the Hollywood sign. We had like the perfect day at Universal Studios Hollywood. We got to see all the things. It was the 60th anniversary of the tram tour. And so they did this special tour that we got to go on and see the DeLorean in front of Courthouse Square. And we had a blast. And so there were some very memorable personal moments for me on this trip as well. Plus being able to see friends who I get to see only a couple times a year in you and JD and Tom, and get to hang out in person like that. Those are always great times too.
Yeah, I was so thrilled to be able to spend some time with you all because, I've been spoiled this year. I've got to see you in New York. I've got to see you in LA. Like, I don't know what's going to happen next year. There's not necessarily a Ghostbusters movie coming out. So I don't know. It's not the 40th anniversary. I don't know when I'm going to see you again. Oh my God. But like, I think it's kind of amazing that I have got to spend a lot of time with you, comparatively this year, given all the cool Ghostbusters things that went on. But definitely that was like 3 days of just being able to come back and forth and hang out and chill and really be around with you all, which is really a joy. Like, you're a lot of fun to hang around with all of you. So, which reminds me, we should start telling people about where they can hang out with you next. Not that they should really go there and hang out with you as much as they should order autographs from you and let you get them as opposed to come distract you. But what's going on now?
So coming up in Orlando, every fall and spring, there is a convention called Spooky Empire, and it is kind of the last of its kind as far as horror conventions go. And that's the lane that it stays to, is a horror convention. And in October, they're having a big emphasis on Ghostbusters. So fortunately for me, and for all of us, I guess, my buddy Eric Heimlich, who runs Category 5 autograph consignments, and myself, we are partnering together, and we are the official send-in for Spooky Empire. So if you go to their website, you're going to see Category 5. We're going under that title because not as many people know the containment unit. But if you scroll to the bottom of their website, right next to JSA Authentication, you'll see the logo for Category 5, and you'll see all the guests that they have. But again, there's an emphasis on Ghostbusters. So we have a bunch of Ghostbusters names. And so really, for me, as spoiled and entitled as this will sound, it really is just a reunion of so many of my friends who worked on the films that I get to see again in my hometown. So I'm excited for that opportunity and to help people add some more names to their Ghostbusters autograph containment units.
So you get to take people out on your personal restaurant tour is basically what the story is then?
And I'm offering, like, if you need a personal guide through Halloween Horror Nights here at Orlando, I'll take you. It was great. And it was a lot of fun. And that's happening at the same time. So imagine going through the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire maze where there's Slimer while you're with Kevin Mangold. How amazing would that be? I'm not making promises because I don't know that I can swing that, but that's the dream I'm living, Jim. Let me dream.
Right now he is still running while listening to the podcast, and he is running away from this proposition. I'm just
yeah.
Maybe he's running towards it. I don't know. Kevin, you'll have to follow up and let Matt know how you feel about this.
Invites on the table, man.
I think that's great though, that you can go do both Spooky Empire if you're going to that con, and then also go hit up the house at Halloween Horror Nights. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you listen to the podcast, let me know that you're coming. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to spend some time getting to know you, and or taking pictures or whatever you guys want to do. We've got some guys from the group coming, and so it'll kind of be a TCU reunion or meetup happening here in Orlando. So we'd love to have you. So just let me know you're coming.
So if people are interested in ordering autographs, then they're going through the Spooky Empire website to find these, or how are they getting to them? Because I went there and I saw like the category 5 thing says contact for mail-ins. Do you just click that and then email?
Is that a thing? I mean, that would be fantastic. This is where podcasting is riveting. Let's talk about clicking websites that no one can see. But yeah, so it looks like you can actually click on the logo for category 5 and it'll generate an email with the email address. And you can just let us know who you're looking for and we'll get you taken care of. Or you can just email the letter C5 spelled out. So CFIVE graphs@gmail.com. Or if you're in the containment unit, you'll see us post about it. Or if you're in the category 5 autograph consignments Facebook group page, that's redundant. Facebook group. There we go. You can find all the information in there as well.
Yeah, I simply saw that when there is a logo that you could click on the Spooky Empire website, and it will take you to that very same email address, c5graphs@gmail.com. So if you want to just go to a link easily, you can do that. But who are some of the people who are going to be at that event who are Ghostbusters folks?
Yeah, so I'm excited because Ernie Hudson will be there. And anytime you get to see Ernie, one of the original 4 Ghostbusters, you got to do it. Plus, he's so great with his fans. And he doesn't age. So he looks the same as he did in the films. And so I'm excited to see Ernie again. In addition to Ernie, William Atherton will be there. So if you want to meet Mayor Peck for yourself, you will have that opportunity on October 11th through the 13th. Or if you need his autograph, we can get that for you.
Is this like his first con appearance in a long time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's at least his first one since FanFest in 2019.
Yeah, like I mean, in that I barely count as a con. Like I don't think of that as a traditional con experience because you were spending a lot of money like to go to that as a specific, like it was not the traditional, like you're going to a con and you're spending a couple $100s on tickets. Like if you wanted to have the experience of seeing those people, you were spending like, $1,000 or whatever it was for your class 5 or class 10 badge. Right. So
yeah, I
don't think about that even so much as like a traditional con as much as one that like was for very deep Ghostbusters fans who were willing to pay a specific price point. Right. But like general admission con stuff, I can't think of the last time I saw him. And even Ernie, I'm like, I don't know that he's done a con since Frozen Empire came out. Like he's been, I think, pretty busy.
He might have done 1 or 2. And we know that he's here for Spooky. Then he's in Rhode Island. So he's got a couple things coming up. And so again, if you've never had the chance to meet Ernie, you have got to do it. He is an absolute. He's kind of been the torchbearer for Ghostbusters for so long. He's been the one doing cons and keeping the franchise relevant. Him, along with the likes of Robin Shelby and some of these others who just continue to do cons and continue to engage with fans over the years. And so you got to meet him. You got to meet him. And if you can't, we can help you. We can get your stuff signed for you.
And you might even get avocado toast in your order. No, you won't. But if you don't know that story,
do that at a con, I will be impressed.
If you don't know that story, you need to go listen to that episode of the Containment Unit and the previous episode of Extraplasm where we talked about that, where Matt and Tom were on, because Ernie Hudson's wife makes really good avocado toast, apparently. That's a thing that we've learned. Who else is coming to Spooky Empire?
Then we've got Billy Bryan. So Stay Puft and Slimer in the new Frozen Empire, worked on the Librarian Ghost. He was a puppeteer for that as well in Frozen Empire, and Baggy. Then you've got Kevin Mangold, who was Slimer and also a puppeteer on the Librarian Ghost as well. And then the name that I'm really excited about, not because he's any more or less important than anyone else, but I just haven't had the chance to meet Ian White. Ian White is Goraka. And so for those of you who, like me, have been working on Frozen Empire pieces, Goraka is kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big name. And so Ian White he's in town. He'll be there. He resides across the pond. And so he'll do some UK shows every once in a while, but to do something stateside, it's more on the rare side. And so he's also done Predator. Has he done Alien? I don't know. I can't recall, but he's done different creature things over the years for a long time. But for us Ghostbusters fans, he's Goraka, and can't wait to meet him and get him to sign my Frozen Empire print.
I think that's definitely going to be a Spooky Empire, because essentially what you've just explained to me is that Slimer, Goraka, and Stay Puft are all going to be in the same location at the same time.
And the biggest villain of them all, Walter Peck. I mean, come on.
That's right. That's right. And only, it's kind of like Frozen Empire. Like Ernie Hudson's going to save us all. He's going to be the one guy who's there. He's got all the money and all the tech, and he's now leading the Ghostbusters at Spooky Empire against all of the villains. Yeah. And they're doing, in addition to that, they've got like a big Fright Night reunion. They've got some Hellraiser stuff going on, Child's Play reunions. For those of you who are on the Disney side of things, they got a Nightmare Before Christmas, small mini reunion going on. So again, there's just so many great names that are going to be there. And we're offering help as the official send-in partner with Spooky Empire. We're offering help for all of them. So any name that you see on the website, we can help you get. Just make sure you click on that logo on the website, or just shoot us an email to c5autographs@gmail.com, and we'll get you sorted. It's pretty amazing. There's a lot of great people who are going to be at this convention, whether you're a Ghostbusters fan or not. I mean, there's just a ton of really cool performers from a bunch of different horror franchises. I also think it's funny Michael Gross is going to be there, which I realize, like he's been in horror movies and stuff, but they also have the photo of like Family Ties. So it's kind of here's all this horror stuff. And then here's Michael Gross with Alex Keaton next to him, which is just, hey man, he's never not been that guy, right? Honestly, that'll be a character he is forever.
If I had him sign something, it's going to be Family Ties.
Sha-la-la-la. Hey, Christy Swanson's going to be there. You can meet the original Buffy. That's pretty amazing. So there you go. I did see that Jim Fye is not going to be there any longer, which if you are a Ghostbusters 2 fan who was hoping to meet the Statue of Liberty, unfortunately, that won't be a thing you can do. But
unfortunately not. But he's another one who is a friend of the Containment Unit. So I was so badly hoping that we could see him. But it was not meant to be this time around. So we'll catch Jim at another time.
Still pretty amazing though. If I were in Florida, I would absolutely go to this. Seems like a cool experience. And if you're not in Florida and you want to get things signed anyway, well, now you know how. Go over to the spookyempire.com website, click on guests, and then you can click on the logo for Category 5 autograph consignments. When is the cutoff for mail-ins?
The cutoff is October 4th.
Okay. So if you are interested in getting this done and you're listening, you need to act quickly. Beyond what's going on with the Spooky Empire convention and where people should come and find you and go gallivanting through horror nights with you and apparently Kevin Mangold. Anything else that you all over at TCU Collectibles and the containment unit have going on?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the only other thing that we have that's really going on, and it's one of those things that we offer every once in a while, and people always get mad when they don't get in on it. And we do what we call mystery bags or mystery boxes. And so what it is you're paying. It's kind of a blind bag, and you can get sometimes it's multi-signed autographs, sometimes it's right at the value of what you pay. Either way, you're always a winner. And people, if they get duplicates, they're trading in the group, and so
right, chances
are you're going to get something that's really helpful. And so we have an 8x10 mystery bag, which is $40. And inside that, you'll either get signed 8x10 or a signed ray gun card, which people go nuts collecting those things. We also have mystery boxes, which is the next level up, and that is $100 a box. And we have only like a couple of those left. But inside that is going to be an 11x14, or it's going to be some higher end items with some higher end names. And so those have been really cool. And it's been fun to watch people post the stuff they've gotten. So if you're curious what's inside, just go through the Containment Unit Facebook group, and you can see some of the things that people are getting. So you can get an idea of what you're getting. And usually people are winning more than they are losing. So make sure you check that out. And then the last thing is we've got you got to say this carefully. We have Peck packs. And so these are the Walter Peck 11x17 prints that are very much like Obama's change poster. This is Peck's campaign poster that he has signed for the group. They are limited. In addition, there's only 40 of them. And each one also comes with the Vote for Peck campaign button. So those are $100 as well. So these are a few things coming up that we have that are exclusive. Once they're out, they're out. So it's never too early to start holiday shopping or buying something for your favorite Halloween friend. If you're interested in those things, we still have a few. Reach out to us at the Containment Unit or send us an email to slimedsignatures@gmail.com, and we can get you taken care of.
You know, I also think it would be a good idea if we threw a little bit of Halloween friendness to two of the folks who have contributed to some of the stuff you're talking about. You know, Eric Christensen, of course, like designed the Peck poster and did an amazing job. And if you haven't seen this, go over to the Containment Unit autograph collecting group and check it out. It looks like an Obama Hope campaign poster, except it's a Peck poster. And
that's what it is. Hope, not change. My bad. But that's exactly what it is.
They were both hope and change. So they were the two words of the campaign. But I think it was the Hope poster that's really more based off of. But like, it's essentially like the styled after the Shepard Fairey set of posters that were done for Obama's campaign. And they look really amazing. I got to see these in person when William Atherton signed them, and I was totally impressed by them. And I don't know why I didn't get one. I should have, but they're really great. And the other person,
you still have a chance, Jim. You still have a chance.
I know, I do. I can still buy one. I should just do it. Why haven't I? But then who will buy one of the ones that are left if I take them? But I also should say this, that I want to throw a shout out, not just to JD Raymer, because he's, you know, done some pretty amazing stuff in terms of recording that Stuart Ziff interview and what have you, and just being a great friend of the show, and to you all. But he's also been producing these trading cards that people have been signing under the name Pinbackers. And I believe that he's actually got a new set of cards that he's offering for your signing at Spooky Empire as an option for people that I want to make sure I sort of shout out there.
You're absolutely right. That's my bad. Totally spaced on that. But you're right. JD he's made modern versions of vintage cards. So in the style of the old Topps set for some signers, but then he's also using this new modern, simple look that is really classy and really clean. Yeah. And so he's posted all those on his Facebook group, Pinbackers. Or if he's posted that in the Containment Unit as well. And so if you're into trading cards, that's my jam. If you're looking to get some trading cards signed, JD has some really great products through Pinbackers that it will be worth it for you.
And I have some of these in my possession. Like, he did these great cards that look like they come from the Ghostbusters 2 top set of like the Scolari brothers. I think he did one of that then Hank Mayo signed. I've got one that he did of Nadim from Frozen Empire that Kumail signed, and they're just really cool. Like, you can put them into the little card display frames and they look great, and they're not expensive, like, and they're really well produced. Like, JD, you know, as a person who does visual editing for television and film and what have you, and so he knows what he's doing with
it's kind of a big deal.
Photoshop. He's kind of a big deal. Yeah, JD's kind of important. That's why we talk about him so much in this podcast. He won't come on the podcast. I keep saying come on the podcast and like do an episode, and he's like, no, I don't need to be on mic. And you're like, come on,
That's
man.
so dumb. You know? He's so great. He's so great. He's got so many good stories. He's so easy to talk to.
I know, but he says no to being on the show. So instead, I'm going to encourage people to go check out his trading cards because they're amazing. And if you're into, like, if you're a person who's collected ray gun cards and stuff for years, like, this is another option for you. That's a really cool fan produced, like, high quality trading card that will look great in a set that you collect and will fit right alongside other stuff that you've collected for years. And so
absolutely.
It's nice. They're affordable. They ship well. They're really easy to deal with. It's not like posters. You got to, you know, get rolled and what have you. So
they don't take up a bunch of wall space. Like they're perfect. You put them in a book. They're easy to look at. They're easy to enjoy.
You don't got to put them in a tube to mail them and then have them shipped by UPS with special charges for being a non-flat item. Yep. Yeah. You don't have any experience with these problems, I'm sure. I don't imagine that you've ever had to interact with anything like that, Matt. That's just
nah, not at all. That's Tom's problem historically, fortunately for me. Thanks, Tom.
You know, I should say one person we haven't said I should give it a shout out to today is Tom Henry, who's not with us today. Because I think that you guys are on a break, you're on hiatus because you've had a lot of drama. Not really. I'm totally making this up.
No, we're in our golden years, Jim. We're in our golden years.
Oh, okay. Got it. So this is the part where you are out going to Spooky Empire and he's calling you on the phone going, you're going to get yourself killed.
Yeah, he's constantly questioning me. Why am I doing this? I should be spending time at the beach. And you know what? He's right. He's right. I should be at the beach. But yet I keep going to this autograph nonsense.
Oh, it's really that he's going to start a rogue autograph company so that way he can convince you. He'll be like, I understand you want to collect autographs in your old age, but you got to find a way to do the things you love differently. That's why you should call Tom Henry Autograph Services.
And I would totally bless it.
That's why he's not here.
Go for it, dude. Tom, go for it.
I appreciate you both. You've both done amazing things for the community, and you've done great work with the autographs that you get for folks. And you're also just both wonderful people who not only come on the show and talk to me about what you're doing with what you have going on, but you also engage me in my life in my instant messages when things are going crazy. And you've both been really great friends, not just to the podcast, but to me. So I'm glad we got to catch up a bit today and let people know about what you have going on. I want to say 100% fully endorse, get your autographs. If you don't have any in white, and you probably don't, get it. Like, cause you've never offered it before. So I don't know where anybody would have got it if they didn't get it from you. So go get the in white at least. And if nothing else, get everything else. Yeah.
It's a great opportunity for sure.
Yeah. I'm totally stoked about it. It's definitely on my list of things I need to get done. But I will say that I hope that you have more coming down the pike, because it's not just because I want you to, get lots of great autographs, but because I always like to have a good excuse to talk to you because it's fun. So, advice, do you want to know what my advice is for the future?
Yeah, absolutely.
Start getting ready for those of us who are going to need autographs from cartoon performers.
Yep, you're right.
Animation cells, baby. Animation cells.
You're right. That's a thing. They look really cool signed too.
Yeah. So hopefully we have that coming down the pike, and just I hope that everything else continues to go well for you all over at the containment unit and just in life in general. So, Matt, anything else that you want to add in before we wrap things up this week?
No, that's it for me, Jim. Again, it's just great to catch up, man. And I appreciate your friendship and your support and all that you do for our community. And I'm just glad to connect, man.
Yeah, me too. And I appreciate you coming out of the podcast. And as usual, for being an awesome person and a great friend. And, don't be a stranger if you're coming back to LA, because, I want to hang out. Not just because I want to hang out with your friends, but who are really cool, but because I really like hanging out with you. But yeah, thank you again for coming on the podcast, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Thanks, Jim.
All right. That about wraps things up for Extraplasm this week. I want to say one final thank you to Matt Sanders for coming on the show this week and chatting with us a bit about the experiences that he and Tom Henry have had working with Ghostbusters talent over the last few months, as well as what's coming up down the pike in a few weeks. I also want to say thank you, of course, to Brendan Pearce at Badoochi Studios, who provides our visual identity and the logo for the podcast, as well as vaporwave artist MAGNAVOX, whose version of Ghostbusters serves as our theme music. And I want to say thank you to you for tuning in, for listening, and for being incredibly patient. Some of you sent some really kind messages last week when there was no episode, as things were really going wrong. I was in a lot of pain with my mouth, and a whole bunch of different stuff was going on with my family, as I think some of you know, and I really appreciate the patience that some of you sort of expressed in messages to say to take care of myself, etc. So we're doing it. By that same token, when will you get your next Extraplasm? Hopefully next week. If not, hopefully the week after that. We're going to kind of keep it free flowing through the month of October as we need to, given the family demands that are going on. But don't worry, the podcast is not going away and not disappearing suddenly. It'll be back even if you have a week or two off again. But I do appreciate hearing from each and every one of you. Please don't be a stranger. If you have anything you want to share with the podcast, of course, reach out at extraplasmpodcast@gmail.com, or via Instagram. You can reach me at Extraplasm, via Facebook, Extraplasm Podcast, and of course, Extraplasm on X or Twitter or whatever it is we're calling it at this point. Be well, be happy, be healthy, get ready for the spooky season, and Halloween is almost here, and it is prime ghost-busting season, and I'll talk to you again soon. And remember, as Ernie Hudson reminds us every time we chat,
try to have fun and always keep on busting. Take care.